Okay, welcome to the Shir and Avodas HaParsha in the beautiful neighborhood of Shari Chesed in the wonderful Kehila of Ner Avram. So we're going to try to do something a little bit tricky tonight. I'm hoping it does fit together, kind of two parts. Part number one is a little difficult because it's going to focus on one image that's brought in a pasuk that's part of a bigger story. And afterwards, we're going to go back to the story and see how that image fits. Now, that probably made no sense at all, so let's do it, and then you'll see what it is. We have here in Behaaloscha descriptions of Am Yisrael being a kemisoninim, right, which is a lashon of sadness, let's say, complaint, and Hashem punishing them. And then we have afterwards V'asafsuf asher b'kirbo, V'asafsuf, those who collected in among Am Yisrael, the Erev Rav, what's called, Hitavu ta'ava, meaning they worked themselves up into desires, lusts, and they started crying, and Am Yisrael all got into it, and they yelled, Mi achilenu basa, who's gonna give us meat? And they remember different vegetables they ate in Mitzrayim. They say, Atar nafshenu yevesha ein kol bilti alamon anenu. Our souls are like desiccated. We got nothing. We just have the mon. And, it goes on with this. And then we come to Moshe Rabbeinu, who hears this crying. And it says, Vayicharaf Hashem ma'od. And Hashem got very angry, ube'enei Moshe ra, and in the eyes of Moshe it was bad. So that alone needs explanation. What is that? Hashem's bad? Or if Hashem's angry, so it's obviously not a good situation. But Moshe Rabbeinu is adding his haskama at the end. I also say that, so we'll try it. But here's the image we want to understand. Vayomer Moshe el Hashem lama hari osa la'avdecha. Why did you do this evil thing to your servant? Why didn't I find favor in your eyes? Right? That he says, to put the burden of all of this nation on me. Was I, two versions of the Mefarshim, the Ramban says he thinks it's clear, was I pregnant with them? With this nation? Did I give birth with them? That you tell me, carry them in your arms, like in your chest, just like the mother carries the nursing baby, right? Right? On or to the land that you promised to their forefathers. So that's a very powerful image, and it's strange that Moshe Rabbeinu is bringing it here. We have to understand what that shows, and to see this isn't Moshe Rabbeinu, so to speak, wanting to get out of the job. Moshe Rabbeinu here is expressing some pain that he's unable to do that which he feels he's supposed to do. Some Mepharshim say when he complains to Hashem, he says, Lama lo matzasi chen beinecha, when I asked you in Mitzrayim to please put somebody else to take them out, right? He says, I see here, this is something I can't do. So let's just take a look at the image first of this mother carrying the nursing baby. There's, in the Yalkut Lekach Tov, he brings a quote that the Torah Tamima in his biography, the Makor Baruch, about the Netziv, wrote how the Netziv understood this image of Kasher Yisaha Omenet Hayonek. He describes it very vividly, right? He says, you have a mother. Good evening, Barry. Lights up the night when you come, right? So we have a mother with a baby, and she's holding the baby in her arms, and the baby has what some may call an explosive diaper, right? There are diapers and there are diapers, but there are some diapers that are cause great damage, and it escapes the boundaries of the diaper and gets all over the mother. This is what the Netziv gives as the image. He says, will she throw the child down angrily? right? Is she going to be disgusted by the child? No, it says first what she's going to do is she's going to very gently and kindly clean off the child and wash him off and put on a fresh diaper. And only then will she go to take care of changing her clothes and cleaning herself. And then she's going to pick up the child again, just like she did before, and pour out the love on all the things. This is the picture, he said, of what a leader is supposed to be. That a Jewish leader is meant to try to relate to the people like that. And in fact, this is pretty much the assignment that Moshe and Aaron were given. In Mitzrayim it says, Vaydaber Hashem al Moshe vel Aaron, Hashem spoke to Moshe and Aaron, Vayitzavem al Bnei Yisrael. And he commanded them regarding Bnei Yisrael. So there are different versions in the Midrashim. From the Shmos Rabbah, it says like this. HaKadosh Baruch Hu said to them, Bonai sarvonim heim. My children are stubborn. They refuse things. Tarchonim heim. Tarchonim heim means they are nudniks. Al manas came to you makabli malechem. On with this in mind, on this condition, you have to accept them, right? That they're going to be like this. Shu makalli neschem. They will curse you. Shu masakli neschem ba'avorim. They'll throw stones at you. And somehow this is what you're meant to do. In other words, this nation is going to be that diaper, right? Basically, and you're going to get it. So this is what they were. This is what they were given, and this is how a Jewish leader is meant to look at things, right? To be able to see and to do it. Now, how does it get accomplished? Especially, how can one do it? So he says he has to love. He says the teacher has to love students, parents have to love children. Anybody in any position should try to love the people that they have to take care of. He gives an eitzah. How do you develop it? He gives an interesting eitzah. He says, daven for them. He said, if you daven for them, then you also learn to love them. I heard, I think it was the Talmud Rebbe said once, sometimes you can have a meeting in the school, in a teacher's meeting, and they're talking about this kid. It was a problem. This kid is a problem. He's done this. He's done that. I don't know if we should give him another chance. We should throw him out. And the teacher is really, strong about that's it. The rules are rules. He has to go. And someone asks, what's his mother's name? He says, I don't know. Look in the database. Did you ever daven for him? Right? Did you ever daven for him? Right? In other words, he's saying this kid has problems. This kid is that, right? Is it there? Rav Wolbe said his parish in Israel, in Hebrew, they talk about accepting someone into an institution is l'kabeloto, to accept the person into a yeshiva, into a school. He says, it's not that he's getting accepted, it's that you are accepting him upon yourself, right? That is something you're taking upon yourself. Now, it's true. Sometimes it's not always the right match and it can go. But the Talmud Rebbe brings that the Beis Yisrael, sometimes if it came that a boy had to get thrown out of the Ger Yeshiva, the Beis Yisrael always checked to see where he would go next and to try to help him reach that next station, right? And really to be there with him in that case, to try to show that. So this is this image. Now, he brings there in the description of the Netziv, he said he saw this in the Netziv. Again, the Netziv is Reb Naftali Tzvi Yehuda Berlin, who's Rosh Hashiva in Volozhin. And he says the Netziv was always helping people and incredibly patient with people who came to him and sometimes were really what you might call wasting your time. He said he saw time and time again, some people would come, they would ask him a question, and they would come back and they would ask them the same question again and again. And the Netziv would calmly repeat again. And he said sometimes, after a couple of times, the people's seichel would wake up and they would actually say to the Netziv, I hope I wasn't bothering you. I hope I haven't taken too much of your time. And he would just say, no, you haven't. Clearly, I didn't explain myself clearly enough. That's the way he would say it, which is there. And that's the idea of giving the people the kavod which is there. Now, again, it can be different in different settings. In the middle of a shir, right? There was one time I was on a shir, Moshe Shapiro was giving a shir, and someone asked a question, and he answered, and then the person rephrased the question. So Moshe said very elegantly, I'll say it in his elegant Hebrew and then translate. He said, "Ani ro'eh she'ata choshed bi she'eineni mevin otcha. Ten li lachshod b'cha she'ata lo mevin oti." Right? He says, "I see that you suspect me of not understanding you." He says, "Maybe let me suspect that you don't understand me." Right? That was the way he put it. Okay, in the middle of a shir is one thing. Yeah, it's like so. Um, but when it comes to other people, there was a story that I saw. I wish I had saved the clipping. It was in one of the front periodicals. It was the memoirs of a young, he was now an old man, but when he was a young man, he got to be the substitute Heusbacher for Reb Simcha Zelig Rieger of Brisk, the Brisker Dayan. Okay, when Reb Chaim Soloveitchik was the Rav of Brisk, but the Dayan of Brisk was Reb Simcha Zelig. And so this was after Simcha Zelig's Rebbetzin had passed away. So they would have a boy stay with him, to help him out and to carry his things in the morning. So the regular fellow had to go away, and the person writing this article said, "I got to step in." So he stays in Reb Simcha Zelig's house. The next day, they get everything together. He's going to the Beis Din. They're walking the street. An elderly gentleman comes over to him. He says, "Rebbe, I have a shaila." "What's your shaila?" He said, "I got something mixed up in my kitchen." And he goes through them very slowly. Okay, what was meat? What was milk? Fleshik, milchik. Did you use this within 24 hours? What was hot? What was cold? And then they said, "It's okay, everything's kosher, but be more careful next time." The man thanked him very much, goes off. In the afternoon, he's walking him home. Same man comes over to him, starts saying, "Rebbe, I have a shaila." "What's your shaila?" "Something mixed up in my kitchen." "Tell me what?" This was some milk got on this, etc. They went through the whole thing again. What was cold, what was hot, what was there. He said, "It's okay, just try to be more careful next time." So the boy said, "Rebbe, that's the same shaila he asked you this morning." He said, "I know, he asked me every day. That question today, he forgot he asked me twice even." He said, "But you know the question, you know the answer. Why don't you just say kosher? Why do you go, right? What was the milk? How much milk? What was cold? What was hot? What was these things?" He says, "Because he doesn't know that he already asked me the question. His question deserves respect." He says it should be treated like that. Okay, so this is kasher yisa ha'omen esayonik, right? This is just in a little bit how to accept it. So now let's bring it back though to our parsha in the Torah. Moshe Rabbeinu is saying, "I can't do that," right? He says, "Why? Because I wasn't pregnant with them. I didn't give birth to them, so therefore I can't do it." Now, what is this? Moshe Rabbeinu, if Hashem tells you to do something, right, so obviously you can do it. What is it here that you can't do? So here I always turn to the Mor Shemesh, right? There are many, many mefarshim on these mysterious psukim. Everything from what they were upset about in the first place, right? Vayhiyam kamisonim. So the Ramban says this was like their first journey that they went from Har Sinai. This was the first time they went into the desert, and they were 3 days out in the desert, and this was already not so. Now again, they had the wonderful things and they had the Anani covered and everything, but it's frightening. And they don't know this, and they start thinking about how things could be more pleasant, and they start to complain. That's one of the ideas. So here, this is how the Mor Shemesh explains the progression of things. Okay, it starts off first with the people being in this mode of complaint, and we'll see the word mitonen. Onen is the deepest stage of Avelos, right? The first stage before the nifter is buried. So it says that Hashem got angry, v'ativa bam eish Hashem, v'yispalo Moshe Hashem v'tishka eish, Moshe Rabbeinu davened for them, and then it moves right into v'asapsus v'asher b'kirbo hitavu ta'ava, right? That the Erev Rav, now hitavu ta'ava is an interesting thing just in terms of diktuk. I'm not a diktuk expert by any means, but hitavu is the hitpael form. Hitavu ta'ava is they made themselves desire things. Okay, in other words, they worked themselves up to desire something. That's hitavu ta'ava. And they started crying, all of Am Yisrael, who'll give us meat? And now Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Hashem, Lama harayosel avdecha, why did you do this bad thing to me? Hanochi arisius kolam, was I pregnant with them, etc. And then he finishes, so in kocha ato seli, if this is what you're going to do to me, hargeni noharog, kill me, vale reberasi, and I won't see my terrible state, is what it seems. Also, a very strange request. What is that? Which is there? What's HaKadosh Baruch Hu's response before getting into the fact of how they will get slav and they will have meat? Esvali shivim ish. Gather together 70 men, right, who were the Shotrim of Bnei Israel. They say actually those Shotrim in Mitzrayim, the Mitzrayim, also like the Nazis, appointed Jews to be in charge of Jews. But these Shotrim were tzaddikim, and if the Jews didn't fulfill their quota, they would take the beating instead of them. And here is where they received the greatness that came. Okay, now then it continues on. And it says that Moshe Rabbeinu says, Hashem says, I'm going to give them basar, going to give them meat. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, how can you give them enough meat? Sheish meos elef ragli. The men alone, like of army age, 600,000. Hatzonu bakar yishachet lehem u'matzah, right? Is there enough sheep and cattle to shecht for them and give them? Yeah.
I mean, before the night before the man, Hashem also sent to the Slav.
Correct.
What's
the difference between that slav and this slav? Yeah, this one was asked for in a bad way, right? Over there, that slav, I've wondered about that too. I still didn't get it straight and clear enough. There, it says at the same time when they first got them on, it also said they were given slav. They were given that. Here, they say part of it is that they asked, even though they had plenty of cattle and they were asking for it. Yeah, they had. So, and Hashem tells Moshe, Hayad Hashem Tichtzar, is the hand of Hashem limited? And this is what we have. So he says, now let's step back and see what's going on in terms of the world of Avodah. And he brings an idea that many people think is a very Hasidic idea, but you look in the Bali Musar, you find the same thing. That atzvus, sadness, umarashchara, depression, are very negative for a person, for their Avodas Hashem, and you have to try to keep yourself as far away from it as you can. Okay? He says, now, a person who finds himself in such a state of sadness and depression, this is actually going to lead you to many different averas. How does it work? He says, one thing you will see is that a person who is sad and depressed will often have a problem of emotional eating, right? They will eat a lot and constantly think about food and look to food and more food, etc. It's true. I think there are some people who are depressed and they have no appetite. I'm not an expert in this, but there is certainly an idea of what's called emotional eating. People have even done a study of what's called comfort foods, what foods people go to help themselves feel better when they're not feeling good. And he says they eat with great desire and speed. And the problem is that doesn't solve the problem. In fact, it often makes you more sad, right? That you've just eaten, a kilo of ice cream, and now what? Right? And it's there, and then it goes. And he says, then it's a downhill slope, because then you look to other desires and other things that can, and sometimes again, it's just a distraction or a moment of pleasure in the midst of your pain that helps you step out of it for a minute, and you have something to look forward to when you don't think there's anything to look forward to in life. But it just gets worse as it goes on, and then it's a cycle, because fulfilling those desires leads to more sadness. More sadness leads more to desires. How can a person get out of it? He says you need to have a connection to a tzaddik who can help you break the cycle. Now, there are different types of tzaddikim. There can be a tzaddik who is so elevated and so purified that the person who's in that negative cycle can't really learn anything from him, because that tzaddik is able to eat rich foods, doesn't affect his spirituality at all. Adarabba, he serves Hashem with it. He's able to wear beautiful clothes, live in a beautiful house, and all those things are part of his avodah. right? This idea of raising the holy nitzotzos, the sparks in it, everything goes to the kedusha. So therefore, a person who's struggling with his addiction to these desires and the sadness looks to Moshe Rabbeinu and says, that's not going to help me because you do all of this and it causes you no problems. Right. So he says, I can't learn from him. So what he has to do is connect himself to a tzaddik who is a tzaddik, but he's not on such a high level. He's also still betoch ha'avoda. He's still in the game, so to speak. Right? He may not be dealing with the same level taivas that you are, but he's experienced them. He knows what's going on. He has his own struggles sometimes. And he says he's still working on purifying himself. And therefore, he learns and has learned through his experience how to succeed and how to protect himself. And then other people can learn from him. That's the understanding of the strange chazal that says, Ein mamanim parnas al hatzibur, elim ken kupa shel shrotzim tluyo me'achorav. You don't appoint a leader for the tzibur unless he has a past. He has a box of, a knapsack of shrotzim, of creepy crawlies, right, on his back. There are things in there that he had to work through, and he knows how it worked through. And he still has what to do, and he's still working on it. So he is able to then help those people. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu says. He says, I don't have the nature of these people. It was a cry of pain. Moshe Rabbeinu did want to take care of them. Like HaKadosh Baruch Hu said, Vaitzavim el b'nei Yisrael. They're going to complain, they're going to be stubborn, they're going to accuse you of things, they're going to curse you, they're going to throw things at you. And Moshe Rabbeinu said, it's all fine. If I could help them, I don't see how to help them. I don't know what they're going through that I am able to help them, that I can model for them the ways out here. And therefore Hashem appointed the Shivim Zakenim. Now that doesn't mean that the Shivim Zakenim are on a higher level than Moshe Rabbeinu, because you see all of their power of Vayotzel min haruach asher alav that he took from the Kedusha that was on him and he spread it to them. And they were able to, so to speak, they were like a transformer, a distributor of Moshe Rabbeinu's Kedusha in a way that the people could connect to it and could use it to help them. So this is what Moshe Rabbeinu was able to do. He says, I am not able to do it for them in this way. I don't understand it, I don't have it. And therefore, right, he says, I am going to need help. This is what HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives him. So it teaches us here the idea that oftentimes everybody quotes the idea that a person who does tshuva me'ava zdonos nasin kischuyos. Things that you did intentionally in the past. Intentional averas become merits. They become pluses. They don't just go from negative to zero. They go to plus. And there are a variety of different explanations, but one of the most basic ones is your life experience can help others. You went through something. You may still be going through it. You may be bearing the scars even of what you went through, but you're able to understand other people and help other people and connect with them. And I think, and I'm not an expert in many of the self-help groups and things like this, people get mentors. And the mentor is someone who has gone through it and is ahead of the game, and in fact is still working on it himself, right? But he's gone through it, he's able to do that. And that enables a person to really take that and to put it there. So that when a person becomes, and they become subsidiary to Moshe Rabbeinu, so to speak, Moshe Rabbeinu's deputy to that, then the people are able to do and are able to connect. That was the answer that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gave Moshe Rabbeinu. So we shouldn't look at here that Moshe Rabbeinu was wanted out of the job, right? That Moshe Rabbeinu said, I've had enough, right? Sometimes a person comes, to the boss, to the principal, to something, I've had enough. If I'm not getting another class, I'm not coming back next year. Okay, that's it. That's here. This wasn't what he was saying. He was saying, I want to help them, but they've reached a spot that I can't help them with my avoda, right? With what and where I am. And HaKadosh Baruch Hu understood that. He understood that and gave him those Shivim Zakenim who were there. So HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives leaders of different types to Am Yisrael. It's something, I think it's a true thought. Baron Kotler, they said, when he started the Lakewood Yeshiva, so there were a couple other yeshivas already in America, but he especially came with the idea of learn and learn and learn for many years. And people would ask him, especially potential donors, Rabbi, what's the program? When do people get ordained? When do they get their smicha, right? Or when do they become teachers? And he says, the program is learning. And they said, Rabbi, what's going to come from that? And he said, you don't win a war with pistols, you win a war with cannons. I want to produce cannons. Okay, that was his idea. And in many ways, he did produce those cannons, etc. My little add-on to it is, but a pistol is still useful. Okay, in other words, there are things a pistol can do that a cannon can't. You can't put a cannon in your pocket, right? You can't hide behind the door and shoot at somebody with a pistol, with a cannon. So the only thing is, a pistol has to know that he's a pistol and not a cannon. If he knows he's a pistol, right, and he knows there, so then everyone has that thing that they can contribute from the different things that HaKadosh Baruch Hu sent you through in life. So especially people who want to like cut themselves off from their past, so to speak. It's true. The process of tshuva is saying, I'm not that person anymore, like Ramchal says, but I am a person who remembers that person. And overcame it, correct. So that is what comes here and what can be done. So a leader of Am Yisrael understands what he can do. He asks Hashem to do all that he can do. And he also takes advantage of the kochos that HaKadosh Baruch Hu gives in Am Yisrael to connect up people to the right things that they do because of his love for them and his great hope to help them. Sometimes you need the right person to change that diaper. Okay, have a wonderful day.